Hi, Jamie here. It's been a while since I've made a video and I've just had some stuff going on. I recently broke my foot and I recently got a puppy. So those two things together have combined to make a very interesting and challenging and character building month. Um, but that needless to say, I'm on month one of what's going to be 4 months of recovery from breaking my foot. And I that's a whole other story that I can tell. I actually contacted, like, I got lucid a few nights before I broke my foot and was talking with my guides about it, and or not about the broken foot, but about just some other things that were going on. And I came out from the trance state or from the lucid state, and I thought, well, that was an interesting conversation. I sort of remembered basically we talked about a few things that weren't going really well for me personally, some of them incredibly petty, and some of them more substantial. And one of my guides said, "Oh, I know exactly how to solve all those problems just in one shot." And I remember kind of hazily thinking, okay, yeah, I can do that. Um, and then a couple days later, I broke my foot. And it's funny how those things have kind of lined up that this is going to kind of solve. It's a whole nother story, but I thought that was interesting. But today's video is going to be about trance states that I have experienced using Jeremy Garner's process. And I've talked about Jeremy Garner so much on the channel, or at least I feel like I have. I'm probably not enough. His work, this video will just literally touch the tip of the iceberg of what his content is. It's so incredibly fascinating. There's so much to it. I'll just start with a little quote that I took from his website, which he has 3 websites as far as I know, and they're all 3 of them are just so dense and rich with information. But the one that I will quote from is from his website called Aquarian Revolution. And the first sentence on his website says, "We are a movement seeking to liberate humanity from the confines of mundane life." And that that statement alone is just like so powerful and so important and hits me at my core of who I am. We are a movement seeking to liberate humanity from the confines of mundane life. Man, if I had heard that somebody could say that sentence when I was 12, 13, 14 years old, I would have been set. But here I am hearing it now at the age of 42, which is fine. I'm so grateful for his work. But so this video is really going to touch on some of the experiences that I've had using his process. So first, I'm just going to go through my journal and literally kind of read you some of the more interesting tidbits that I've had in terms of visionary states working with his process. And his process is really focused on going to Faerieland, which I've dived deep into going through his process and dive deep into what that means, and it's just so much more rich and nuanced than I had imagined from the start, to be honest with you, and so important. I'm learning as well, working with my guides as well, talking to me about the importance of that. The first thing I'm going to do is go through my journal and just sort of read off some of my experiences I've had. I think that they'll be really interesting to people. The second thing is I'm going to go through some of his books, not all of them, but a few of them, and some of the books that he references to sort of highlight different quotes that I pulled out. Again, it's going to be the tip of the iceberg. It's not even going to touch the content real deeply, but it's going to be, I think, interesting for folks. And the third thing I'm going to do is give you my 3 tips on working with visionary practices. I have changed so much in my own practice, and it is a direct result of Jeremy Garner's work. So without further ado, I'm going to take my journal. So this is kind of what I started back in, it's been almost, gosh, I feel like it's been a long time. But anyways, so I just started this journal just to literally separate it from my dreams, just to put quotes in from my direct experiences with accessing Faerieland, accessing different visionary states, different places keeping flexible, but using his process. So the first one, and this is from January, so it's from the beginning of the year. I've been doing this since the beginning of the year. My birthday that year fell on a full moon, and I had so many dreams before I realized that my birthday fell on a full moon of a full moon. So many visions of full moons, and I would listen to certain things about other things, and they would mention full moons. So I looked up and I thought, gosh, I wonder when the next full moon is, and it was, sure enough, it fell on my birthday, which was January 6th. And it got to the point where I was listening to a podcast, and there was, and this, I say all this because this is what happens when you do his process, is that the world just becomes very magical and everything becomes very connected in such an amazing way, and it just happens very naturally. So I looked at my birthday, and sure enough, my birthday fell on a full moon, and I thought, well, that's remarkable, and here I am seeing all these full moons. And I was listening to a podcast, and they mentioned something about Dion Fortune and a book that she wrote called Moon Magic. And I know Dion Fortune. I've read a number of things by her, but I had never read Moon Magic, and I didn't even really know that she wrote nonfiction, or sorry, that she wrote fiction. So I thought, well, that's interesting. And then I looked up on the Wikipedia page about Dion Fortune, just like, oh, she's so interesting. I really got a lot from some of her other books. And she died on my birthday on January 6th. So January is when she died. So it's just a lot of connections that way. Again, his process will do that. It will put you in this place where things become very magical once you start doing the work that he talks about. So so that's kind of one thing that happened in January. In January too, I also started trying to get to what he calls the harbor of dreamland. I figured, I know dreams, if that's the entrance that people can get to this state or get to this place, then that's where I'm gonna go. I feel like it's just natural for me to go to dreamland, to the harbor of dreamland. And I started in my visionary state seeing a lot of water and a lot of ghostly figures going through the water. Then later that month, I started having more visionary states of, specifically, I'll tell you one where I was on like kind of a gravel road, paved though, dark, it was night, there was a giant full moon, and there was straw on either side kind of blowing in the wind. It was really beautiful. But what's interesting was that everything was glowing. Everything had kind of an iridescent blue tint to it, and there was wheat fields everywhere. So I'm kind of seeing water, I'm seeing wheat fields, everything's glowing and translucent. I really felt like I was really onto something. And these things are visions that are coming in and kind of knocking me on my ass. I can have plenty of visions that are, kind of, and I don't discount them at all, that are more foggy or hazy, but these ones are the ones that I'm sharing that really were like, I wake up and my heart is pounding, and I could really ride on that feeling for weeks because I know I saw something. It's clear as day, and I was there for a good 3 seconds or 4 seconds. That's kind of where I started. I started seeing a lot of ocean, and again, I'm trying to go to the harbor of dreamland, so I think, okay, well, that's probably spot on. The water was so perfectly clear. I could see off in the distance there was kind of what looked to me like would be a mountain, a white mountain, giant white mountain off in the distance. And there was a man in a boat, and he was turned around to face somebody, to tell somebody behind him something. And then I saw the men in the boats a number of times. And I just thought, well, could this be the harbor of dreamland? So that sort of shifted away. Life comes in, and then I was reading more about his practice of kind of touching on the experiences of the earth that we're on. And so I did a little bit of that. I won't touch into that, but it was really fascinating, the results of that. So yes, and then so now we're kind of more in the January, February, March, April range, and I decided to kind of think about where I'm from, and like, okay, maybe that's kind of too vague. I won't go into that, sorry. So anyways, I can't tell you, I could just go through this whole journal and just go on and on and on about all the visions that I saw. But that's a good taste of it, I think. I've seen so many more since then, but I don't want this video to be crazy long. I did decide that it would be long from the beginning, but that's fine. So yeah, so that gives you a little bit of a glimpse. There have been so many experiences I've had that I could share. I just don't know. I mean, I've heard dogs barking. I've seen dogs. I know that there's guardian dogs at the gate. So I really feel like I'm opening up into this realm, and it's really just about his process. So I'll go ahead and grab the books and start talking about them. So the first one I'll show you is his Guide to Faerieland book. It's very thick. It has so much in here, but I thought it would be good because I am actually talking to my guides about Faerieland and about fairies in general and why it is that they're so important. And they haven't been super transparent about that, but they do say that it's important. And I'm starting to understand why. So I'll read you a quote from his Guide to Faerieland book that really sort of hit me. He says, right now, the fairies in that parallel dimension are trying to bridge this connection between the two so that we're able to harmonize the two much more, and so that it becomes more of a one harmonized structure. And that's fascinating, and I think that there's a lot of truth to that in that way. His other book I'll talk about is Fairy Magic, and this one, I don't know, there's no words for sometimes to say how rich it is. He talks a lot in this book about how to sort of become an initiate, really seeking deep inside ourselves the love and the trust and the heart space. Something that I've never fully understood, something that I could always read about, but I'm starting to feel and experience more. And I'll read you a quote from this book as well. We need that which does not depend on the comings and goings and losses and findings of this world. This does not mean we cannot live and express the changeable desires of the moment. We should live to the fullest, yet with a deeper awareness of the heart of the matter, where instead of the changeable physical form, we can clearly see the unchangeable eternal spirit. And it says, instead of the falling or growing leaves, so instead of the falling or growing leaves, we see beauty. Instead of the contradictions or confusions, we see the divine unfolding. And we love in each moment that which is pure, true, and eternal. And this is just a quote from this book about visionary states. So he says, it is necessary to be very clear about the fact that the experiences which subsequently can occur are not imagined, nor something that is visualized. But the visualization simply leads to the real and very tangible practical experiences, which is quite undeniable in its realism once it occurs. That is exactly what it is about. It is because the imagination, I've been wrong this whole time about imagination and about its importance. And there is this sense when you go into these trance states that you're making it up. And I've actually known this in my heart for a long time as I did this work, that somehow I was making it up. But somehow when I made it up, it would not become true, but that it would bring about the truth. So yeah, so that's it. And I wanted to also show you the other book that he references is called The Candle of Vision. This book is phenomenal. They're all phenomenal. This is the first 5 pages of this book. I thought, wow, this person is me. This is me. It's exactly what I am going through. I can read you a small quote from this book as well. So he's talking about his imagination again. So this author, A.E. George William Russell, who was also an artist, says, "If I suppose it was imagination, I am justified in trying by every means to reach with full consciousness to the arsenal where such wonders are wrought. I cannot be content to accept it as imagination and not try to meet the architect. As for these visions of airships," he's referencing visions that he had of airships, "and for many others, I have been unable to place them, even speculatively, in any world or any century, and it must be so with the imaginations of many other people. But I think that when we begin speculation about these things, it is the beginning of our wakening from the dream of life." So I couldn't agree more, and I've definitely been living it. The other book that he references a lot is The Fairy Way. I have read this now 3 times. It's absolutely phenomenal. I'm not going to quote much from this, but the processes in this book are really great too. So yeah, that's about it for the books. I hope that was interesting for some. I'll give you my 3 tips for visionary practices that I have come to realize are really important. The really big thing that I've come to terms with this practice is that there's something about there's something about realizing that 2 opposing ideas can exist at the same time. For instance, my first tip is to consider the time of day that you're doing these visionary practices. Now, the old Jamie, who made 7-minute videos, who wanted everything to be structured and clear, pretty worried about everything, to be honest, would have said something like, "It matters what time you do this work." And I lived it. It did matter because I could only do this kind of work in the early morning hours of the day. I'm talking about like between 4 a.m. and anything after 9:30 or 10 just seemed to not work at all. Everything I read about astral projection, everything I practiced really said that. So on the one hand, that is important to consider. The early morning hours of the day are important. After a night's sleep, still a little foggy, try to do your work at that hour. At the same time, it's not true. I've had plenty of amazing, once I started into this more fluid process that Jeremy has talked about here, I've had amazing experiences at all times of the day in visionary states. And so both are true. So number 1, time of day. Number 2, accept everything. Accept everything. That is hard for people, I think, because we want to compartmentalize everything that we see and everything that we experience and put it somewhere that makes sense. And the reason why I feel personally that I didn't fail so much in the beginning, but I certainly wasn't experiencing what I thought I would. I was really determined to sort of, I practiced being lucid. I knew how to go into a visionary trance. I'd struggle holding it or whatever, but I could do it, and I wanted to go to Faerieland, and it was just very clear to me that that's what I was going to do, and it was just like A, B, C, D. That's how it goes. And it didn't. It didn't at all. In fact, I had to let go of this notion of it needed to look a certain way or it was going to look a certain way. And now that I'm practicing it regularly and sort of living it more wholly, I see now why that was a real restriction on my part. So accept everything in a very black and white way. The foggy image, the foggy idea, when you close your eyes at any time of day and really let go and just wait and just look at that moment before thought, anything that comes in there, just accept it and write it down. I've had thoughts, I've had ideas, I've had crystal clear images, but all of them were relevant and all of them were really valid to what was going on with me and my life. And remain open to that. to all of it. So accept everything, accept everything in that way. Of course, use discernment, you know, don't just like, you know, but be open. And the third tip I have for visionary practice is just to do it. I'm one of these people that I really feel like everything has to be perfect first. I almost didn't make this video because I'm sitting here on my knee scooter with a broken foot, feeling pretty crappy about myself in that way, with a new puppy, so I hardly sleep, you know. No, just do it. Just do it. Just go do the stuff. Don't wait. Just do it. I think a lot of people that at least I've spoken to, they don't want to start because they think they don't have enough tools or something, or they haven't practiced enough of something else. And just close your eyes, let go, let the visions come in, write them down, and start your magical journey of this life. Because I don't know, you know, I studied so much of astral projection, I've studied so much of dreams, and it's all been amazing. But this process, working with Jeremy Garner's work and being open to, I mean, different types of mythologies and different types of ideas and what that means and how it's interwoven into our reality, all of that and so much more has made everything so much richer, with my work and everything. So I'm gonna leave it at that. This is literally the longest video I've ever made. I don't take that lightly. This isn't for everyone. I know that too. But I know that there are people out there that are doing this kind of work, and I just would love to hear your thoughts on it. So I will be making more videos about this. This one really, I kind of brought in a few of the images that I've been mapping out in terms of how I'm doing, what I'm doing in terms of Faerieland. Why can't I say it? Just Faerieland. And also different places that I'm going. So I'm mapping that out in the visions. Then my dreams, on the other hand, have shown so much as well. And I'll make another video about that as well. So I hope you're doing well, and I'll talk to you soon.